Good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Justin Ladine, Communication Strategist at the ACLU of Alabama, and I will serve as the MC for this morning's press conference. Let me begin by saying thank you to the members of the media, our partners, advocates, and community members for being here with us today. We are gathered at a critical moment, not just for reproductive health, but for democracy and accountability in Alabama. At its core, today is about who gets to decide what information our communities have access to, and whether our lawmakers are truly accountable to the people they are meant to serve. Today is Our Bodies, Our Futures Advocacy Day, and we are here because decisions being made at the State House right now will shape the health, autonomy, and futures of young folks and families across our state. And these decisions are not abstract. They determine what students learn, what parents are allowed to know, and whose voices are valued in the policymaking process. We are here to state our clear opposition to SB209 and the continued push for abstinence only until marriage sex education. These policies are not about protecting young folks. They are about limiting information, silencing evidence, and removing decision-making power from communities, families, and individuals. When lawmakers choose ideology over facts and control over transparency, they are making it clear who they believe should hold power. And today, we are here to remind them that in a democracy, power belongs to the people. We are grateful again to the media for helping ensure these voices are heard beyond this space, and to every person here who believes that our communities deserve honest information and leaders who listen. With that, let's begin. I'd like to welcome Courtney Rourke, Southeastern Regional Movement Building and Policy Director at URGE.
So this is the third year legislators have brought this harmful legislation that would mandate all sex education taught in K through 12 Alabama public schools be, quote, sexual risk avoidance, of which Alabama young people and parents are deeply unsupportive. The majority of parents in our state support teaching both abstinence and contraception, condoms, STI, HIV, and unplanned pregnancy prevention, healthy relationships, consent, and more in schools. In 2019, 40.7% of Alabama high schoolers reported having had at least one sexual experience. Alabama's youth face high rates of unintended pregnancies and sexually transmitted infections, with our state ranking among the top 10 in the nation for teen birth rates and STIs like gonorrhea and chlamydia. SB 209 is not about protection. It's about control and denying young people access to the information they need to make informed decisions about their bodies and their futures. Inclusive sex education provides information relevant to all sexual orientations and identities, reducing stigma, mental health struggles, and health disparities among LGBTQ+ young people. Young people are often exposed to misinformation about sex, relationships, and reproductive health, whether from social media, peers, or unreliable sources. Many of these sources spread harmful myths about contraception, STIs, gender, and consent. This can often lead to sexual shame and trauma, which perpetuates through generations. A lack of information, or only information that is highly stigmatized, creates so much opportunity for violence to happen to our young people. Comprehensive sex education acts as a crucial counterbalance, providing young people with fact-based, medically accurate information that empowers them to distinguish truth from fiction. It creates a safe and open learning environment where they can ask questions, challenge misconceptions, and gain skills to critically evaluate the information that they encounter. By equipping students with science-backed knowledge and critical thinking skills, comprehensive sex ed helps prevent the spread of myths, ensures that young people make informed, healthy decisions about their bodies and relationships. Finally, in a state where abortion is completely banned, Medicaid is still not expanded, and nearly half of our 55 rural counties are maternal health deserts. Putting comprehensive sex education out of the reach of young people is just another instance of a long history of state-sanctioned control and violence against young people, especially those who are Black, brown, indigenous, LGBTQ, cash poor, disabled, and rural. Alabama youth deserve truth and sex education that is medically accurate, comprehensive, and LGBTQ affirming, not puritanical ideology that is completely out of touch with their daily lived experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Courtney. Up next, we have Anisha Hardy, Executive Director of Alabama Values Progress.
Good morning, y'all. All right,
morning.
so I'm here today because policy doesn't just live on paper, and I say that often, but it really lives like, in our homes, at our kitchen tables, in our futures, and we need to ground ourselves in where we are standing right now. I often remind folks that the State House, has a long history of being a place where decisions about our bodies, about our families, and, our freedom have been made oftentimes without our consent. From these very, steps, lawmakers have passed and continue to pass bills that oftentimes are rooted in fear, control, exclusion, and across generations, we have seen coordinated efforts to restrict information, right? To police our bodies and limit autonomy through policy. So SB209, which is something, we're gonna talk about here today, is not an outlier of that. It is part of a historical pattern. SB209, a bill that mandates abstinence only instruction, bans medically accurate information about contraception and abortion. It restricts who can provide sex education, and it empowers the state to police what young people are allowed to learn about their bodies. I do want to name that it is being propped up as a reasonable education reform, right? Framed as protection for young people, but wrapped in what I call moral language about responsibility and about values. But underneath that framing is a deliberate effort to restrict access to medically accurate information, to limit who can teach it, and to punish schools that don't conform to, a narrow ideological standard. And this wouldn't be the first time, nor will it be the last time that this state and this country have used morality and so-called values as a cloak for harm. Moral language has long been weaponized to justify policy violence. It was used to defend slavery, as moral order. It was used to uphold segregation as tradition and to rationalize the dehumanization of Black people, of women, of poor people, and anyone deemed outside of the bounds of the dominant culture here in this country. So time and time again, appeals to morality has been used not to protect communities, but to control them. And SB 209 follows that same dangerous pattern. So I do want to name clearly that SB 209 doesn't simply, emphasize abstinence. It really mandates silence and censorship. So when you think about this bill, I want you to think about it in that way, right? As someone who has come to know two things to be true, and that is knowledge is power, and that who controls the narrative controls the power. And as I stand here today, I can say without a doubt that SB 209 and similar bills is not protection, that is narrative control turned into policy. So we have to understand the moment that we're in clearly. So when lawmakers restrict, knowledge, they're not preventing harm, they are really shaping the outcomes. They are deciding in advance who will have agency and who will not, who will be prepared and who will be left vulnerable. And in Alabama, where, maternal health outcomes are among the worst in the country and where rural hospitals are closing, denying young people accurate information is not just irresponsible, it is very dangerous. And so this bill, and bills like it tells young people that we don't trust you with the truth. It tells parents and educators that your expertise doesn't matter, right? And it tells communities who are already navigating systemic barriers that the state knows better than your lived experience. And those are lies. This is why SB 209 must be named for what it is. It is a reproductive justice issue. It undermines bodily autonomy. It denies young people the information and resources they need to be safe and informed. And targeting, I do want to name that targeting K-12 education is not accidental. It's very strategic. It is a political strategy. Because by intervening early, before young people can vote, before they can lead in their communities, before they can become educators, or shape policy themselves, these bills attempt to limit, their agency before it's fully formed. So like many of us who are standing in solidarity here today, we understand that having accessible information is part of reproductive justice, and that This issue is foundational not to just health outcomes, but to democracy. I want to name, I'm oftentimes conflating these issues to democracy because democracy requires informed people. And when people are informed, people are empowered. And when people are empowered, they act. So when the state decides to replace public health with this type of fear-based ideology, it weakens all of us. Because the issue here isn't sex education, it's power. Who has it, who loses it? The folks, behind these walls are employed by us. I oftentimes say that we can demand that they do their job, right? And I often say that every moment that has ever shifted this state or this country forward did so because people refused to accept the story they were being told. Now, the conditions that they were being placed in, they challenged it. They didn't just sit in it. They organized. They showed up anyway. And that's what today represents. This is what democracy looks like. We hear that phrase a lot, right? But that means not being silent, not being fearful, but people standing together and saying our bodies and our futures are not up for negotiation. So SB209 must be stopped, not just because it's bad policy, but because it represents the wrong values here in Alabama and across the country. We deserve better. Our young people deserve better. And no matter what happens with this bill, I do want to name something, that we must hold on to our radical imagination. Because even if SB 209 makes it through the chambers, it does not get to determine our vision, our values, and our future. We must imagine beyond bad policy, right? We must organize beyond these harmful laws. And we have to continue to build a world where our young people, what they deserve, one that is rooted in, their human dignity and also freedom. Thank you.
Thank you, Anisha. Now we will hear from Jatan Bosby-Gilchrist, Executive Director of the ACLU of Alabama.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to see folks here. It's important that we gather because we know that policies passed in this building have direct consequences to our lives, the lives of real people and Alabamians. And these decisions about our health, our bodies, and the well-beings must reflect guidance, evidence-based information and data, and the real-lived experiences of our families and who we are. So historically, schools have always provided a place where young people receive reliable health information. And that remains true for many Alabama families today. So not every household has access to consistent medical care or trusted resources within their communities. And so when the state restricts what we can be taught in classrooms, it is not filling a gap, it is creating a gap in a state that is limited with resources. So SB 209 attempts to solve a problem that is virtually non-existent, while ignoring the real material needs of young people across the state, rather than addressing real gaps in healthcare, education, and resources writ large in this state. This bill would restrict information, limit the ability of trusted educators to provide medically accurate information, and age-appropriate instruction. This bill is unnecessary. Let me say that again. This bill is unnecessary. It is misguided. It is harmful to the well-being of Alabama's youth, in which we should be investing in because they are the next generation, not that will lead us, but that are practitioners in the state. They will be educators. They will be policymakers. They will be doctors. We have a responsibility to inform them in their formative years. We know that from the data, Alabama continues to rank among the highest state of sexually transmitted infections, while there has been a decline in pregnancies in the age group of 15 to 19 across the country. We still remain one of the highest in pregnancies of this age group. So these outcomes are not accidental. They're directly tied to limited access to information and care in this state. And I would be remiss if I did not connect this conversation to the fact that we have a lack of abortion access, reproductive care, and sexual health information in this state. There is something to be said about that. So when we talk about medically accurate education for young people, we have to promote not just safety and responsibility, they are connected. There's a level of intersectionality when we talk about not just the policing of bodies, the through line of medical autonomy, that includes all of us, Black folks, brown folks, women, LGBTQ folks. It is critical that we know that this is not separate from that. Our goal today is simple and it is urgent. Young people deserve access to honest, medically accurate, and inclusive information about their bodies and their health so they can make informed, safe decisions. Informed, safe decisions. They need to have the autonomy and the information to make those decisions about their bodies. Public policy should protect young folks, not endanger them. And at a time when access is limited across the state, we can't afford policies that exacerbate an issue or create an issue that is virtually non-existent. We don't have an issue with information that is too accessible. We have an issue in the state with information that is not accessible, particularly to the people that must know it. And so when we stand here today, we have to understand that the decisions made in the People's House affect us. They affect our families, they affect our everyday decisions, and most importantly, they affect our children. So SB209 fails to do that, and we're here to make sure legislators know to vote no. We are here today with a call to action, that legislators know, the individuals that you elect to represent you, vote no on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you again to our speakers. As we prepare to close today, I want to be clear about one thing. Today is not the end of this moment, it is the beginning of what comes next. We spent this morning naming the harm of SB209 and the continued push for abstinence only until marriage sex education. But naming the problem is only the first step. What matters now is what we do with this energy. In a few moments, we will move from this press conference into direct action, beginning with a rally and followed by advocacy meetings with lawmakers. This shift is intentional because democracy doesn't stop at sound bites or at statements. It requires action. And this is what democracy looks like. People showing up, talking to lawmakers, and demanding better for our state. So to everyone gathered here today, your presence matters. Whether this is your first advocacy day or your 50th, showing up is not small. It is powerful. And every story shared, every meeting attended, and every question asked is part of how we create change in this state. Simply put, today is an invitation to remain engaged beyond this moment, an invitation to keep learning, organizing, and participating. So thank you again for showing up, because together we will move from presence to power. Before we transition, I want to again thank our members of the media for being here today and for helping to ensure these stories and voices reach beyond these steps. Immediately following this press conference, we'll move into a rally hosted by Yellowhammer Fund, and we ask all attendees to remain here on these steps as we prepare. Thank you.